City University Television. In association with the Center for Advanced Study in Theater Arts. And the Harold Clurman Endowment. Presents Spotlight.
Welcome to the Harold Clurman Seminar on Theater. I'm Ed Wilson, and my guest is one of our most prolific and original playwrights, Lanford Wilson. Lanford, welcome.
Thanks.
We are glad to have you with us today. I want to start out by talking about the fact that you have, it seems to me, you've written in your plays such a diverse group of plays in terms of location. Plays like Bomb in Gilead, Hot L Baltimore were set in New York City. A play like Angel's Fall is in a mission in New Mexico. Serenading Louis is in a suburb of Chicago. Mound Builders was set in Illinois. The Tally plays are set in Missouri. Is there any reason for this diversity, or is it just for you wanting variety, or what exactly?
They're all places I've lived or places I've been.
I see.
And I haven't lived in the Southwest. I mean, in
New Mexico.
In New Mexico. But
you must have
been
visited
through oh yeah, a lot, and I love it there. Enough when I was an art student in California, we used to go to Arizona and paint the missions, and that's how that mission rose up one day, saying, "Are you going to deal with me or not?" The characters from there are all people from various places,
yes,
from Chicago,
in Angel's Fall, they come into that setting
from
different parts of the country. But I just wonder, is there any conscious effort on your part to move into different places or not?
No. If I can think of a place, I'll grab onto it. I don't care where it is. Except one time I was working on a play that took place in an advertising agency in Chicago.
Which you worked in. You worked in an
Yeah, I
advertising.
did. And it took place there, and I said to myself, this is the most boring set I've ever seen in my life. John Lee Beatty, who's our designer, is going to hate this play. And I kept trying to find a different, and it ended up being the first Tally play, 5th of July.
Oh, really? Which was
in a house in Missouri.
In Missouri.
Well, it moved from the advertising agency to a house out on Long Island where I live, and then to a house in Chicago, and then finally to a house in Missouri that I knew a long time ago.
Well, then place is obviously very important.
Place is very important. As soon as I know where the place is, and I don't always get it first, I get the characters, and I keep saying, where are they? And after I know where they are, then the place solidifies for me.
But you can't really write the play until you're comfortable in the place.
No, I can't. I can't really get it until I know where I am and what's outside those walls and where the highways lead to.
I think it's fascinating that 5th of July. Now that was the first of the Tally plays you wrote, wasn't it?
That was the first one.
Because there are really 3 plays in that Tally saga, shall we say? The 5th of July, which takes place around 1977, 78.
77. July 5th, 1977.
And then there were 2 that took place in 1944, Tally's Folly, which takes place at a boathouse on a farm there, and then the action at the same time in another play, Tally and Son,
Up on the Hill.
Up on the Hill. Those are taking place simultaneously, aren't they? But
that was great fun.
But the first one was the 5th of July. So in other words, the idea for writing about the Tally family really started with that play then, didn't it?
When it finally got... that play went through so many changes trying to find itself. It was, as I say, it went through all those locations, but the people were even more. It started in an advertising agency in Chicago with that scatological story about the scatological Eskimo story. It started with that. That took place in a agency in Chicago, and then it moved out to Long Island when it started being about the garden. The character came in who was a gardener, and there's no gardens in Chicago.
That's Jed.
That's Jed, then it went back to the Midwest for some reason, and not until I had quite a bit of that play did I realize I know where they are. They're in Lebanon, Missouri, which is my hometown. But it took forever for me to find out that I was writing about America, really, and that we wanted to start from the center of America. I was writing about that whole generation of...
Is that one reason why it takes place on the 4th of July and the day after the 4th of July?
The day after the 4th of July was very important to me. It's so many of my friends were, and not my theater friends so much, but I was just about 2 years too old to be a hippie, but so many of my friends were hippies who had gone through that whole period, and I'd been up to Woodstock with them, and I'd been all over with them, and they were disconsolate. They didn't quite know what they were doing. They were living in the past in some odd way, and living with a sense of failure, and I knew that I wanted to kick them in the butt in some way and say, would you move on?
Yeah.
You know, and so 5th of July has always symbolized for me the day after and like,
let's get on with it.
It's a day to go back to work.
Right.
As he says, hey, honey, tomorrow's the 5th. Everybody's going to be back to work. And it's like, get on with it now.
And you
Stop
wanted...
ruminating.
You wanted several of your characters. You've got, of course, Ken is the main character, who's a Vietnam veteran who's lost the use of his legs.
Right.
He is a homosexual, and his Jed is his homosexual lover. But Ken has sort of given up. I mean, not just because of the war and his legs, but as a potential teacher. Everybody feels he should be a teacher, but he has given up on it.
He's a natural teacher that was one of those wonderful teachers, modeled very much on Rex Bowers and a couple of the other teachers that I had that were very, very important to me. And as he said, he was very good morning, Miss Dove, very goodbye, Mr. You know, but he was one of those wildly active teachers who moved all over the place and danced around, and just the sheer magnetism captured the imagination of his students. Well, with both of his legs gone, this has considerably hampered his activity, and the lateral movement is not so easy for him anymore. And he has been he's very conscious of that, but he goes to the school that he comes back to Missouri to teach. Wildly overqualified for this job to teach high school.
Absolutely.
But he's going to teach high school back there because he's inherited this farm, and his lover is a botanist and is going to make a garden there. So he goes to the classes to meet the class he's going to teach next year, and no one looks at him. They all look. All the people look.
Is this because he
limps in with the two crutches and talks to them, and no one ever looks up, and he realizes that he's not equipped to teach in any other way from the way that he used to teach, and it has undermined his confidence to the extent that he doesn't want to teach anymore.
But by the end of the play, he's decided to...
Well, he's a natural teacher, and he must teach. He must find a way.
Exactly, to do this.
To do this. And eventually he will. He's just got to.
But you want all the people in that
gross
play.
Factor.
You want all the people in that play to get on with their lives.
Exactly. Everyone gets a kick.
The singer and everybody else, or the would-be singer, I should say.
I have to write another play about that singer because I love her story. Gwen. I love her story as this drugged out, ridiculous. As she said, as I said, she has a lot of soul. She said, well, if I don't have a lot of pain in my voice, who does? Because she's had everything removed.
Right.
But I love her story because she's very, very rich, and her husband is sort of taking over her empire and holding the carrot of the career up, and at the same time, he's manipulating all of the people to tell her she's great and buy a contract. And so she auditions for the people down in Nashville, and they flip out for her, and the wrong people. Yeah,
she turns out to be really good.
Yeah, the people he set up can't afford to buy her. Other people buy her out from under him, and it's really a lovely, triumphant story that's told just peripherally.
In that play, you found your way, you as a writer found your way back to Lebanon, Missouri.
One way or another.
One way or another with that family. But also, and you said what you wanted to say in the play about getting on with people's lives, but also one of the characters in that is Aunt Sally, who is in the play. She has a box with her that contains the ashes of her husband, Matt. Is that where which she wants to scatter or wants to leave there in Lebanon, Missouri, is that where you got the idea for going back in time to the time where Sally and Matt first met? Because, of course, that became Tally's Folly, and the play that did win the Pulitzer Prize.
Sally came about for, at a board meeting of Circle Rep, we had our lawyer came in, accountant lawyer came in, and said, "Oh God, what a weekend I've had. My mother has had the ashes of Dad for 2 years in this box, and we finally convinced her to take them down to Rockaway and spread them on the beach where they went all the time. So we went down and she spread them on the beach, and on the way back to the car she had a stroke. And it was just a mild stroke, and she's going to be all right, but what a week." And I went, "Lord God, is that a story or is that a story?" And it was about 4 years later that I finally worked that into this Missouri woman who had kept the ashes in the box. And because he was an accountant, the man whose ashes were spread was an accountant and was Jewish, I had him a Jewish accountant, wrongfully thinking that cremation was perfectly all right with the Jewish religion. It turns out that they frown on it. But what did I know? So that's how that whole story came about. She goes down and spreads the ashes in the garden and has a stroke the next day.
But then you took it back in time to the point where these two met. So obviously,
well, what happened was the woman who was playing the part, Helen Stenborg, is one of my favorite actresses in the world, said, "Lanford, I need an image for Matt," because she talks a lot about when they met. 40 years ago.
In the later, in 5th of July, which takes place in 70, she needed an
33
image
years
for,
earlier.
Yeah,
So
right.
33 years. And I said, you know, when I was writing it, I thought he was probably about like Judd Hirsch, who's another member of the company.
Right.
And she says, "Okay, I'll think of Judd." I assumed that she would think of Barney Hughes, who is her husband,
right,
and one of the great people of all times. No, when she was on stage talking about Matt, she imagined her and as a young woman and Judd Hirsch out fishing in a boat, and Judd Hirsch being silly. So she used his image all the way through. And right after I said that, I said, "Boy, that would really be a great part for Judd Hirsch." And I haven't written him anything since Hot L Baltimore. And it's about time we used him again. So I started imagining that play while I was still writing 5th of July. I started imagining.
You did, yes.
Yeah, that 5th of July took a long time to write, so the actors, I was writing it for specific people, the actors were getting scenes and everything a year before they ever got to play the play. So they had really been working on the play for a year. That's one of the reasons it had such a great ensemble production. They knew the characters.
But then did Tally's Folly come quickly then?
Tally's Folly was the fastest thing. And I knew the whole story. I knew everything about it by the time I'd finished 5th of July.
Do you think that's one reason that it works so well? Also the fact that it's two characters.
It's two characters, and I was trying to write. I've been basing all of my plays on music construction and on what I thought was symphonic construction and things like that. And I wanted to write a well-made play, and I didn't know what a well-made play was. So I started reading about well-made plays and said, "My God, no wonder no one likes my work. If that's what they expect from a well-made play, I sure don't fulfill that." So I was trying to do that, consciously trying to write a well-made play. And I did, and it's the strangest thing. In Tally's Folly, there is that moment. He refuses to have children because he had such a horrible experience during the First World War with his family, seeing what happened to his younger sister and how children were treated in Europe. Right. Yes. She cannot have children because of an illness when she was 18. And neither one know this about the other. So when he comes down and finally says, "I'm going to take the risk and tell this woman that although I want to marry her, I refuse to have children." And, of course, he's telling someone who can't have children. And she thinks that he's making it up just to fit her situation, that he's done detective work on her or something. But when you hear then that she cannot have children, when he badgers it out of her, he didn't know at all.
Sure.
There is this palpable click of a plot clicking into place.
Right.
You can almost hear it go click.
Right.
And the strangest thing happens when that happens in a play. You think, oh, wow, that is so neat. And you
Right.
just click. And simultaneously you say, I've been ripped off. It's all been planned. It's all, and you have this.
You mean the audience says this?
Yeah, you have this terrible feeling of, oh, heck, it's just a design.
Yes.
And I had no idea.
Which it wasn't. You discovered it. You
Yeah.
didn't plan it.
No, I didn't plan. I discovered it. I was trying to write a well-made play. I discovered that. And in the first draft, it didn't happen like that. In the second draft, it really did. You had that palpable click of the plot falling
Right.
into place.
Right.
And it was so satisfying and so disappointing simultaneously. It was
Yeah.
really an interesting experience.
It must be. But of course, but people do still. More people respond more to the fact that it works.
It's the
think,
most
than it-
successful play of mine,
Is-
as
did
far
you-
as being. I've had one bad review from
Out of
all the times it's been done and
that
everywhere.
must be because that's really unusual.
It was
even
someone
for-
who really hated me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But really, that must be. I mean, I can't imagine that any other play has been that overwhelmingly successful.
Not at all, and it doesn't seem to matter who does it.
It works well.
Yeah, it's been done. It's been done with college kids. It's been done with everyone in the country has played Matt Friedman. Everyone who could possibly play Matt Friedman has played Matt Friedman. It works real well.
I'm sure. It's kind of. Well, I won't say.
Well,
sure.
I've lived off of it for about 10 years.
Well, you
I don't
deserve-
regret
you
having
de-
written it at all.
You deserve it. Well, but as you say, you really, it's something that came to you, and you worked on a lot in terms of those characters. You'd known them before, and it
Oh,
evolved.
yes.
It didn't just happen.
No, it didn't just happen, and it wasn't. I didn't sit down and scheme it all out.
Absolutely.
And also, I've said this before, and it sounds like bragging, and it is in a way. But granted, you put an infinite number of monkeys in a room with an infinite number of typewriters, they would come up with that plot in about 20 seconds because there's no that plot is not difficult.
Not quite.
So, but I defy anyone to write that plot any better. The surface writing of the play, I'm very proud of.
Well, you should be.
Yeah,
Let me
I
say.
like
Let me just. This leads me to one thing about. You say you wrote that, of course, with Judd Hirsch in mind, who was
Judd and Trish Hawkins.
Trish Hawkins. And what we should stop to say just a moment here is that they were both members of the Circle Repertory Company. Right. And you were one of the founders. You've been the resident playwright for almost 20 years, really.
Yeah, since
69.
Yeah,
69
so
or
20
70.
years.
20 years.
20 years now.
Has it meant, and of course Marshall Mason, who was one of the people who founded this, has directed most of your plays.
All of them since then.
All of them since then. He's directed every one, has he?
He's directed every one that I've written.
What
since
has it
69.
meant to you to have this association with a theater? You have an office there, don't you, actually, at the Circle Rep?
Yeah, I like to write with a lot of people around me screaming and yelling and coming in. They rub my back. I say, oh, and they rub my back.
It must have
also, you can rip a scene out of the typewriter and run to a couple of people and say, read this to me.
Really? And do
does it
you
sound
actually do that
Oh, yeah.
at the Circle Rep?
And I hear what it sounds like and say, no, that's not what I intended yet. And I go back and rewrite it and say, now read it.
Well, it must have meant a great deal to you through the years to have worked with people like Barney Hughes, but like Judd Hirsch and Trish and like Jonathan, the fellow who was...
John Hogan.
John Hogan,
Oh, God.
and all these people, as well as Marshall, who's directed all your plays and had that place. A lot of playwrights don't have that kind of security of
I
having
suppose
a
a
place.
lot of people couldn't work that way.
Yes.
But
for you, it's worked, hasn't it?
it's worked for me, and I like the community. I like it very much. And also, I like to write plays for people you don't... Sometimes you take advantage shamelessly of what you know they're going to do well. And sometimes it's
That's
really...
all right.
Yeah. Sometimes it really is a challenge to them. You say, I've never seen them do something like this. And so you throw down a gauntlet and say, okay, say to Tanya Berezin, who always said she couldn't be funny and she couldn't play a genius. And so you write a very clever genius and say, okay, bitch, do this. And they rise to the occasion just stunningly.
Well,
I've
it works,
never
but it's a
seen-
two-way street. They stimulate you and you stimulate them.
Exactly. I'd never seen... I wrote Kenny Talley for Bill Hurt. He had never been funny. He'd never had that kind of wit. Or if he had, I hadn't seen it. I'd seen it off stage, but I'd never seen him play a part like that. That sardonic wit. And, of course, they rise to that bait like a fish on a moony night. It's
Tell me about the genesis of... We were talking about how things formulate in your mind. What was the genesis of Burn This, which, of course, is one of your most recent things?
Burn This came out of a... I got the entire story from someone on a trip. John Hawkins, who lives out in Sag Harbor, where I live, gave me a lift into New York, and I said I was thinking about writing a play about these two roommates, and one of the roommates had died, and it caused her to come into contact with the family of the roommate that she knew nothing about. And he said, "Oh my God, did I ever have that experience?" And he told me practically the entire story of the background of Burn This, and changing some of the sexes around and everything. But he told me the entire character of Pale, who was the brother of a friend, not a roommate, but a friend of his, that he had to go up to the funeral and spend a whole evening with this guy who only drank brandy. And it was a completely different social strata from anything that he knew or anything he expected this friend of his to come from, this small town in I believe, New Hampshire, but of a fishing village and very strange place. It was Rhode Island. So you took this and then, so it really fit right into what you were. It fit right in. It just filled in all of the things that I wanted to do, and I was working. I'd always wanted to write a play for this particular actor, and he was perfect for that part. Is this John Malkovich? No, this is someone I won't mention. Oh, I see. And I always wanted to write a play for this actress who was great, both of them in our company, and then they fit in perfectly to this. And then just weeks later, I had the opportunity of working with them in a different play, and it was the most horrible experience of my life. It was just hell. So I said, well, forget working with those two people. You mean working with those two people just didn't work out? It didn't work out. The chemistry was awful, and it was terrible. And so I forgot the whole plot. Oh, really? Yeah, I forgot the whole thing. I forgot the whole story. I forgot everything about it. Because those two weren't working out, you just forgot about it? I didn't want to write that anymore. About 5 years later, I'm having one of my periodical writer blocks and getting hysterical about it and having a major anxiety attack. And so I sat down and said, okay, at least write an anxiety attack. Just describe the physical descriptions. You never know when you need the physical descriptions of an anxiety attack. So I sat down and started typing out, my shoulders feel like they're filled with concrete, and so on. And after about 4 or 5 lines, it started working into a character describing the way he felt, rather than me describing what. And he was a wildly flamboyant street character, sort of from a New Jersey kind of background, and I had no idea where it came from. And I wrote a whole page of this guy. The anxiety went way out the window after about a minute, and I'm just on fire with this, and Burn This. Yeah, and I got finished with that. I got exhausted from that, and I said, what is that? And I said, oh, God, that's that character. From 5 years ago? From 5 years ago, who falls in love with the dancer, who is, and so the play, I had the whole story for the play, and so it was. But these two, it's almost like putting in nuclear fission or something, putting these things together. It's apples and oranges. But finally, you made them fit, and in your mind, it really clicked. But it was there. That's really two very disparate sort of things that finally came together and fused. Right. I've been doing that for some reason later with the Indian and the professor from Brown in Angel's Fall. And this clash of cultures and clash of society, of very different backgrounds. What about the meaning that these plays have? Where obviously in Burn This, you had the story, you began to develop the characters, and then you had this speech, and out of the speech, you began to develop a persona for Pale, who is this wild character. Where in the process do you discover what this is all about in terms of what it means? Because this is about art, because she is a... This is about art. I'm glad you said that. Because, that's what the play was about, art for me. And where did that come into the thinking process? Well, it came in with the energy of Pale, because it came in where? It came in when John Malkovich did the revival of Balm and Gilead, and I said, I have gotten so suburban in my writing. Now, this is relatively.
No.
And when I was writing Balm in Gilead, it was so raw and exciting and had such immediacy and such electricity. And when Balm in Gilead was revived, I sat there saying, God, I used to really be good. And I was deliberately trying to get some of that
raw energy
back into, so I had to have a character with that raw energy. And also, the street people, at least in my view, see things from such a different point of view. They don't buy all of this nonsense and all the rationalizations. They say, no, this isn't working. The street is a lousy street. You could, as he says, you could lose a Toyota in some of those potholes. And plus,
so you put that together with your thoughts about art, then. In other words,
the energy and excitement of the streets that had excited me to do Balm in Gilead somehow became synonymous with the energy and excitement and the reality, and having lived a life that is necessary to do anything real. And I had a very cerebral sort of dancer who had never experienced anything except 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what she did. It was all kinetic, and with no acting and no passion.
So that Joan, who played the part of Anna,
right,
in this, was the character you saw as being somewhat detached and too much of an aesthete, perhaps, in terms
too much of an aesthete for her own good. Probably an incredible. There was an incredibly passionate woman way down there that Robbie, her dance partner, sensed, because he's from the street way back then.
But that Pale was able to bring out.
And Pale was able, just by coincidence, Pale was able to bring out. And also, she was able to show him a side of life that was completely foreign to him. The whole love scene in their first love scene, he is so shocked that he is with something this pure and fragile and beautiful
yeah.
and sophisticated and was something with such taste and purity. And she is very, very pure in some way.
Lanford, on that note of the energy and the vitality of art, I'm afraid we're going to have to end, but I thank you so much for this discussion about your work and about the plays and about how they evolve and how they develop. It's absolutely fascinating. This has been the Clermont Seminar on Theater, and our guest has been playwright Lanford Wilson. Thank you for being with us.